All right, man. So it looks like Kamala Harris is really surging really, really hard, and nobody's actually talking about this. This is pretty crazy. So I actually just came across this when looking at the favorable, unfavorable ratings, because I noticed that some of her recent poll numbers had like crazy favorable ratings, like plus fives and stuff, which is pretty nuts for like national candidates for president. Now, we do know that her favorables had started to skyrocket early on when Biden dropped out. So we had already known about that kind of like major rise that was happening throughout that time, right? After the debate, like the numbers start to just really skyrocket, especially after the time where Biden drops out, and so you can see that she was all the way down here, like in the 30s, basically, which is weird because she had like a really solid favorable rating. It's not the same as approval rating; it's a favorable rating. And then this ends up really, really rising heavily, and then she ends up taking steam briefly, but then takes a tumble, and then she took a tumble here for a while in the aggregator. This is in the Hill DDHQ. Shout out Double D's, the best, right? Unfavorable, but there's this crazy surge that's happening right now, just like out of nowhere. So what happens is like on August 9th, August 10th, basically there's this massive surge. So she's at 48.8 minus zero point 0.4 margin in terms of like unfavorability. And then all of a sudden she takes it on the 13th. She goes 49.1, and then she starts to skyrocket through, and now she's all the way up to 50.9 to 46.8. And what's crazy is her unfavorable fucking falls off a cliff. Excuse my language. But her unfavorable really falls off a cliff, and that ends up being this really huge thing. And so now you can see she has a favorable of almost 51%, which is insane. And then she has an unfavorable of 46.8 points. So I can't really do math here, but I think it's like 4.7 basically margin, which is huge. It's massive. And then we can look at the recent polls. So recent morning consult poll, plus 5 favorable August 16th through 18th is morning consult. We have the Big Village poll is plus 6 favorable August 14th through 18th. We have the August 12th through 15th YouGov poll, 50 to 46, which is plus 4 favorable. You have this plus 2 favorable. But at least with these current ones we see, there's like this clear shift going on where there's clearly this boost in favorability that's happening, which is pretty crazy. And so I'm not sure if there's like some kind of like small kind of boost that's happening in terms of like, but even when you look at this like morning consult poll, right? Like the previous morning consult poll on August 9th through 11th was a plus 2 favorable rating. It now has plus 5. And what's crazier is too, her unfavorable dropped from 47 to 45, which is insane. So even just like a one-to-one comparison between those two, it looks like the Big Village number also went up. So Big Village last time, Big Village was at plus 5, and then now she's at plus 6 in the Big Village numbers. So the Big Village numbers also went up from the previous one. And then this YouGov, I don't know if the YouGov one is different from the YouGov Economist poll, but this is way larger than the YouGov Economist poll, but that might be different because that's actually in the negative direction. And then in this YouGov poll, it was plus 4 unfavorable, but that's the YouGov Economist poll, though, so that's kind of this one. So that's a surge from there to there. Doesn't look like a strictly YouGov poll is here that I can see. And then those are too far back. But we can see a surge going on in her favorability numbers, and this is huge, man. Favorability is actually a really solid marker for who's going to end up winning. It's pretty solid. So if we look at the favorability ratings of presidential candidates since 1992, the late August, early September numbers are actually pretty solid. So in 2022, Biden had 46% favorable, Trump had 41. He ends up winning. 2016 was an outlier situation where Hillary has a higher one, but she actually ends up losing the election. But the caveat here is neither of them were in the 50% margin. This is massive because Harris is now in August somehow at 51%. Late August, she's at 51%, which is insane, right? This is the late August, early September numbers. And this shift is happening massively where even if you just looked at mid-August, she's at only 48, which is still pretty high. It's pretty massive, honestly. It's bigger than any of these numbers even, right? She's even larger than any of these numbers. So she's having a massive favorability boost that's even higher than Biden's at this point. I think even like the Pew Research numbers or whatever that I had seen had it at like 48. So she's even higher than Biden was in 2020 at this point in late August, early September. But this one is weird because neither of them had a 50%. She has a 50%, but this one went the wrong way. But she still did end up winning the popular vote as well. In this one, Obama has a higher favorable. He wins. 63-59 higher. He wins. 54-42 he wins. This one went wrong. Bush ended up losing. But again, you can kind of say like, hey, Bush kind of won the election, right? But, we'll say he lost it. Clinton wins, and then Clinton wins both of these. So 2 times it's gone wrong in the past 8 times. So it's like 6 out of 8. So I think that's 75% of the time. The final pre-election is less clear because the George W. Bush numbers went wrong by 1 point. They went wrong by 1 point though, and then not both of them were in the 50s. So I think if you're both in the 50s, it lessens the impact. But because Trump is where he's at in the favorable numbers, because Trump is at where he's at a 53% unfavorable, so he's only at 45, which would put him at a significantly lower margin. He also, I think, is having an artificial boost somehow. Like, he somehow went from like 41, 42 in like late June to somehow he's at like 45 now, and he even had like a massive boost from just like 7 days ago or whatever, from like 43 to like 45. So I'm not sure what's going on with his favorable numbers, but I'm pretty confident that these numbers are actually going to end up dropping. I don't think they're going to be able to sustain at these numbers. But if he's not at 50, so she has the advantage here, and I think these numbers are going to fall off into these 45 numbers. I think something weird is going on with these numbers, but if he's able to hold that 45, it still kind of mitigates it a little bit, but we can kind of see that. And then also, like, the approval numbers for, this isn't favorability, but the approval numbers for re-election is also big, and so there's definitely this sort of a big thing in terms of, like, if you're an incumbent, the favorability also has like a really, really large impact on the race. So those are huge, man. So this is a huge advantage, no doubt. And then also, we know that some polls have come out talking about the favorability. So Tim Walz has some really solid favorabilities in the swing states. Another poll also came out having really good numbers in the swing states, like really solid. JD Vance's are really sucky. But this is huge. This is a big favorability advantage that he shares, that she has against him. And I think that the spread is going to get even more massive because the spread is now like 10 plus, around like 10 points. I think it's going to get larger, because I think Trump's numbers are going to go down. So this is huge in terms of predicting where he's going to end up. And if he can go down to like 42, 41, I think if she has a net positive favorability where she's over 50% and then he's around 42, I think it's impossible for him to win the election. That would be insane, unfathomable. So we got another surge also. I wanted to just put a wombo combo together for you guys. So the Decision Desk HQ numbers, double D's. Again, shout out to double D's. Always the best, you know what I'm saying? Always shout out double D's, the best. This is Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by 3% based on 126 polls. Her largest lead yet in the Decision Desk HQ Hill National polling average. And so we can take a look at these national poll numbers. So that poll number, they have both of these in terms of, they have head-to-head numbers at 3% here, so this is large. You can see it's taken a large sort of shift since August 3rd. It's starting to diverge away from each other. And then they also have an aggregator where they also have the Harris-Trump RFK numbers. This one, it has a better aggregate number. I think New York Times had a better number for the reverse, only slightly though. But it's a 4.1% lead. I don't know if this one has peaked out as well. I'm not sure. It might kind of look like it. I don't know. It looks like it's peaked out, but I'm not exactly sure. But it basically looks like it's peaked out as well. So she's peaking here in the 538 numbers. When we look at the numbers, it's actually not as high. It's a little bit it's lower nationally. So I'm not sure if they're aggregating things differently, because this is sort of, I guess this is kind of like the average between the two, but the average between those two numbers wouldn't be 2.8. Like the average between 4.1 and 3 is not 2.8, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? It'd be somewhere like 3.5 or somewhere around there, right? Like some midpoint. So they have the lower numbers here, which is pretty interesting. So I'm getting to the point now where I kind of have to look at all the aggregators. So I guess I'm going to have to go even deeper, honestly, which is going to be pretty interesting. But also, we have some situations where there's some really good stuff getting on the ballot that's really important. So keep a lookout for videos on that. But huge numbers in terms of her numbers are getting the largest on the Decision Desk HQ. And then the favorability is huge, man. Favorabilities are really great. Especially at this time when we saw 6 out of 8 were correct for the favorability advantage. If she has the favorability advantage, I'm telling you, if she retains a plus 50% unfavorable, or favorable, and then I think Trump's favorables are going to drop. They're good. There's no way they're going to stay up at 45. I just think it's impossible. So I think if those can go down to like 42 or 43, she stays above 50. There's no shot that she loses. I think it's statistically impossible at that point, because even though it went wrong. Like it went wrong for Hillary, but the thing is that she was not at nobody was at 50% in that situation. So I don't think anybody's lost in a similar scenario where you have like, hey, you have 50% and then the other person has less than 50%, and then you lose. I don't think that's ever happened, or maybe like a long time ago. I don't know, but definitely not in recent history. Um, I don't think that situation has happened. So pretty interesting stuff to see, even in the kind of pre-election numbers. I don't know if we can, see that. So, but yeah, so pretty interesting. Like you don't lose if the other person has like less than 50, and then you're above 50. I don't think that's happened before. So it would just be pretty much impossible. So her situation would be really unique because even again in this scenario on the final pre-election, 51, 52, you lose. You have 50, he has above 50. So you're both above 50 already. So it kind of neuters the impact of it. And then it's by 1 point, right? So it's obviously, it's kind of that situation. And in 2000, I mean, being 1 point down, I mean, obviously, Al Gore arguably won the election, right? But it would be unprecedented to have above 50% favorable. The other person is at like 42, and then you lose. It's just basically impossible, I'd say. So really awesome news for Kamala Harris, and this is a surge that nobody is talking about. So you got the scoop here.